Everybody, welcome to the strange one, the threat and risk missile warning capabilities. This panel is being sponsored by SciTec. Since 1979, SciTec has been providing cutting-edge capabilities in missile-based modeling, target and background phenomenology, signal processing, and custom tools. Today's panel is moderated by the one, the only Bobby Schmitt. Bobby is the commander of Delta IV. Delta IV provides tipping and cueing for our missile defense forces, battle space awareness for our combatant commanders, and supports technical intelligence. Without any further ado, please welcome to the floor Colonel Bobby Schmitt and our panel.
All right, this is working. Okay, great. First of all, thanks to SFA for hosting this panel about what I think is the most important mission area in the Space Force, missile warning and tracking. So where are my Del 4 people? Are there anybody left? So yeah, there you go. All right, so again, thanks again for hosting this. Looking forward to the discussion today. Thanks for joining us for this panel discussion to discuss how we can partner with industry to enable innovation in our future missile warning capabilities. My name is Colonel Bobby Schmitt, commander of U.S. Space Force's Mission Delta IV, which is responsible for global missile warning and tracking operations and sustainment. And I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to talk to these gentlemen up here about missile warning capabilities, looking at how we can leverage industry for innovative solutions to address future threats. I've been involved in space operations for over 23 years, with missile warning playing a very big part of my career. And I can attest that much has changed in what we do in space, including how we operate, sustain, and develop space systems, and the ground systems that enable them, which are critical to missile warning. I argue that we have experienced a revolution over the past 10 to 15 years, which removed many of the barriers to access that had previously made space almost exclusively a governmental endeavor. What this resulted in was an explosion of companies working in the space business, and it created a large pool of consumers in the private sector. The business case for innovators to design, build, and launch satellites became much more tenable. And I think we're seeing the fruits of that change in areas such as missile warning or remote sensing and satellite communications. However, and this is I think this is where hopefully we can have some discussion. I look forward to that. I'm not sure this concept applies directly to missile warning and tracking to the degree that it did the other space disciplines. I think the business case for missile warning and tracking, considering it's mostly governmental in nature, is more challenging. Nevertheless, this does not change the fact that the U.S. and our allies need to do this mission to protect our people and our way of life. While Mission Delta IV's guardians and airmen are standing the watch every day, ensuring we are providing global missile warning information to the entire joint force so the DoD can disrupt and defeat missile attacks, the need to innovate in this mission area is so important. With the proliferation of legacy missile systems to more countries around the world, some of whom are willing to use them against civilians, to the development of advanced missile threats, we have to not only maintain the great capabilities we have today, but we also have to make sure we remain ahead of the curve so that we can continue to ensure that any missile flying anywhere in the world is closely tracked and that data is rapidly disseminated to those who need it, allowing military forces and innocent people around the world to protect themselves. The U.S. Space Force must find a way to increase our partnership with industry to drive innovation that will allow us to take advantage of new ideas and technologies, and we have to do this without spending billions of dollars that we've done in the past. I'm hoping we can glean a little bit from this panel about how we can do that. Before I jump into questions, though, I'd like to give each panel member an opportunity to introduce themselves and to provide reflections about my opening statement. So first, I'll start with Dave Franklin, who's right there in the middle. So Dave, I'll turn it over to you to give your opening comments.
Well, thank you, Bobby. I appreciate being here. 2 quick points before I start up. One, it is truly an honor to sit on this panel with these practitioners and technologists. I'll be honest, I don't think there's anything that we can't tackle together as long as we are working in consonance together, especially on this critically important mission, which quite frankly deals with life and death of the state. So I agree with you that there is going to be an enduring need for this mission, and the Space Force is the right service to have it. Two, I'll tell you what, I look around this room and I see an amazing group of folks from industry, from academia, even interested folks from the public. I see soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines. I even saw a Coast Guardsman. Anybody see that Coast Guardsman? But what is really exciting for me, having retired about a year and a half ago from the United States Space Force, is to be back with Guardians. It is absolutely amazing to see the discussions that are going on, especially at our most junior levels. So I'll start with that. Again, Dave Franklin, I work for Astrion versus Axiom, I see down there. Astrion is actually acquired Axient, so I can see where the merge happened. Prior to doing some business development, what I'm doing right now, I was doing strategy work. I was Axient's senior space strategist, working a variety of really vexing challenges for OSD A&S, working projects for them, this somewhat included. But I graduated from being a Guardian, but I graduated from US Spacecom as the Inspector General, where I looked at the efficiency and effectiveness of our forces in this US Combatant Commander UCP assigned mission. Very interesting mission set. I was also the Global Current Operations Chief at the Joint Staff. And I will talk a little bit about what we saw there that I thought will be very germane to this panel. I also worked at Global Strike, and interestingly, the senior space individual out at ISAF, where tactical missile warning was of great importance in 2008 as the Iranians were pointing Shahab 3s at our forces out there. So I'll start with that, but Axient and Astrion have been in this business since the early 1990s. And we have 4 really contemporary contracts that we work right now. One is with the Missile Defense Agency doing test, evaluation, exercises, and war games. Another is with the Naval Surface Warfare Center doing threat engineering, which is really high-end business for the missile warning enterprise. And then an integrated fires rapid capabilities office with the Army. And if one thing I can leave this panel with is that the Navy and the Army have been working these type of issues in battle management and command and control and warning for a very long time, and we should be integrating those lessons learned. And then obviously at SSC with our STS-3 architecture that we've been working. So I'm almost done with my sorry, I know I'm bogarting all the time, but I wanted to paint a very quick scenario. When I was at the Joint Staff, I was briefing General Dunford and the Honorable Mattis almost at least once a week. Everything from, hey, the embassy at Bangui is being attacked in the Central African Republic to strategic nuclear issues. And usually General Mattis was very calm, cool, and collected and gave very crisp guidance and intent. But one brief we gave him was on a submarine, Russian submarine called the Severdinsk that would go out and about every once in a while and could pop up 90 miles outside of the Atlantic seaboard and heavily laden with Zircon missiles, shoot a Zircon missile at DC and be there in a minute and a half. That left him completely flabbergasted and vexed. And that is the discussion of importance that we need to have here. So with that, sorry, again, bogarting all the time, but I thought that was important to kind of frame the importance of this discussion and topic.
All right, thanks, Dave. All right, next I'll turn over to Mr. Jim Lisowski. Go ahead, sir.
Thanks, Colonel Schmitt. So first, I just want to introduce myself. I guess I started in this industry 40-plus years ago with one foot in the Reagan-era Star Wars and another foot in the intelligence community. You know, very early on, I want to use a phrase from back then, I probably drank the Kool-Aid about what space could deliver for contributing to a number of warfighter and national command authority mission sets. My work crystallized early in the teamwork that I was fortunate enough to be part of, which was a small government, industry, and national lab team that put in place the technologies and demonstrated them for a number of space programs that really resulted in the Cobra Brass series of systems. Of late, I've been personally focused on improving the technologies for advanced fire control, whole of missile warning, missile tracking, and missile defense command and control, and delivering some of the best-of-breed mission processing into the space computers. At SciTec, we've always had a mantra of delivering excellence, doing it at speed. And in order to be robust about that, we've had to use a lot of automation as a small business. So getting towards the partnership with industry and government, I've been very fortunate to be leading SciTec at a time when it's been able to compete for and win the opportunities to field teams to deliver on Space System Command's future operationally resilient ground evolution, which is really to replace the legacy missile warning system that took over 2 decades to bring into operations and really hasn't been upgraded since then. And so I'm very proud of the fact that we've been able to bring together a team of other small businesses, large industry primes, commercial entities to deliver Forge so that the operators that work for Colonel Schmitt have the warfighting advantage that they need. So I'm going to stop there from an introduction, and maybe I'll get a chance to talk a little bit more about what Forge is delivering, but I'll hand it over to our next guest.
All right, thanks, Jim. Go ahead, Mike Corriea, please.
Yeah, thanks, Colonel Schmitt. First, I want to start by thanking the Space Force Association for putting on this event. Great opportunity for us to connect and collaborate with our peers. When it comes to missile warning, I think we would be remiss if we didn't start with the current program of record on orbit SBIRS and talk about the efficacy of that system. Day in and day out in the Russia-Ukraine conflict and in the Hamas-Israel conflict, that system has absolutely performed flawlessly, given data to our warfighters, and then we've been able to share that with our international partners and allies, and we're absolutely saving lives with that system. And I think as the threat evolves and as the size of raids gets larger and larger, making sure that the systems continue to perform flawlessly is what we're doing here, why I come to work every day. So I just want to start there. I'm also pleased to announce, if you guys are following the press, Lockheed-Martin released a press release earlier today. We remain on track to deliver next-gen GEO, Space Vehicle 1, at the end of next year. That system is going to augment the SBIRS system and provide enhanced resiliency. We've completed integration of that vehicle and are now in the vehicle test phase, and we're actually today kicked off testing of that satellite with the ground system that we're building for that. So really excited to be part of that system and be able to say that we're on track. So looking forward, I think where I think we're going to have to work collectively here, government and industry, is integration. As the government looks to proliferate the architecture, we're going to have to work hard to make sure that our systems are interoperable, that the data, that we can share the data, that it can be processed timely and get out to the warfighter. We're also going to have to help with the sense making of that data set as there's more and more sensors on orbit and the size of the raids get larger and larger. the human in the loop is going to become the limiting factor, and so we're going to have to work together on solving that problem and helping make sense-making and decision-making with the government. So I'll leave it there as opening comments and look forward to talk about that further.
All right, thanks, Mike. And last, I'll turn it over to Rob Mitrevski to provide his opening comments.
Hey, Colonel, thank you for having us on the panel. I really appreciate your moderation as well as SFA's work on getting all of us together here in this forum. Again, as Mike said, I think it's great for us to think about our adversaries, what those threats are, and how we can collaborate for the good of the nation. I'll start by saying that my business is responsible for all of our missile warning, missile tracking, missile defense at L3 Harris as part of the Space and Airborne Systems segment. And I also have environmental weather monitoring capabilities too. And it sort of goes back to the question you started with was, your premise was it's a very complex mission. And the complexity of the mission doesn't quite lend itself to as much commercialization as maybe other areas. I think I'll say it's a very complex mission that doesn't necessarily have to be exquisite. It can be complex and innovative. It doesn't get to rely on commercial technologies as much as things like commercial comms and having things like Starlink as a backbone, having things like the transport layer being able to leverage commercial capability are very interesting, and you can draw a really straight line from existing capability into those missions of need. You can still draw a line into the missile defense business as well, though. If you look at my business and the way we were able to capture, I think as the only prime, all of the tranches so far with the Space Development Agency, our work with the Missile Defense Agency, and our Epic One work with Space Systems Command, that's really the triad that's responsible for our next generation missile defense architecture. And the way we were able to break in as innovators and disruptors is really to leverage what we had been doing for many, many years in the infrared on civil missions. So that takes care of the sensing aspect of the mission in space. We were able to leverage what we had been starting to do on onboard processing for other mission areas, work with national labs for the exquisite part of the algorithm work, stand up our own capabilities for the bringing those algorithms on board, and then do some smart partnering like our partnership with Palantir on things that deal with artificial intelligence, machine learning, et cetera, to really pull all of that capability together. And in the end, the missile defense mission is not only one of sensing and being perceptive to those missiles, but being able to drive the messaging to the right place at the right time with the lowest latency out of any mission there is. And there's some sauce, secret sauce there, right? And so it's not quite commoditized, but certainly leverageable from a best practices standpoint. And that's what we're doing to really drive the state of the capability within our government customers, driving affordability into those areas, driving innovation into those areas, so that we're not just doing the same thing we always have as the threat is evolving in front of us.
Thanks for your opening comments. And I think I said you were last, but I actually missed my colleague down there, Colonel Rob Davis. So, sir, please go ahead.
All right, thanks, Bobby, and thanks Space Force Association for having us here and really hosting this panel. It's a pretty unique panel focused on a certain mission area, and you have the operations element on one side here. You got a bunch of industry partners we'll talk about here in a second. And you have the acquisition community represented here. So a really great opportunity for us to talk about the entire life cycle between the government and industry of how we're coming together and partnering. So I'm Colonel Rob Davis, the PO, Program Executive Officer for Space Sensing at SSC. And the Space Sensing Director at SSC has a singular focus to sense, make sense, and win. So what are we talking about when we say win? Well, just to kind of wrap up some different perspectives here, and before we start the conversation phase, it should be no surprise to anybody here that we're in a race. We're in a race against the pacing challenge with China and the acute threat of Russia and other actors on the world stage. We're in a race against the proliferation of traditional ballistic missiles, most notably demonstrated, as mentioned earlier, with Ukraine and some rather large events with Iran and Israel recently. But the world has seen how great the systems that folks on this stage, either operate or have built in the past, and many of you in the audience have helped either develop and field and operate today, how well those do against those threats. So not only are those things proliferating, but they're also advancing in technology, maneuverable payloads, hypersonics, and whatnot, so we have to get after that threat. Well, if that wasn't enough, as many of you know, and as discussed earlier briefly on the threat briefing, there's the counter space threat as well. So as a consequence of these emerging missile technologies, these dimmer targets, maneuvering targets, and the counter space threat, the missile warning architecture, missile tracking architecture for your nation is pivoting away from the geo and polar assets that have long served the nation to more resilient and capable against today's threat architecture of MEO and LEO. And then also, not to be forgotten, the elements of the ground that have to bring all that together. The ever more important ground element, given the number of sensors we're talking about having on orbit. So how are we going to effectively do this? And it was mentioned a couple of times here, so I'll just put a fine point on it. We're going to have to partner to win. That's going to be partnering within government channels. If it's, Bobby and I partnering on the Guardian side, if it's this SSC partnering with Space Development Agency and MDA and our combined program office for that new proliferated architecture, or if it's partnering with industry like we never have before, or as was mentioned earlier too, by expecting industry to partner with each other like maybe we haven't done as effectively as we could. So that's what we're hyper-focused on at SSC and Space Sensing. How do we partner to win to be able to field combat-ready forces at a pace that sustains and supports competitive endurance? So looking forward to the conversation.
All right. Thanks everyone for the introductions. I've got a couple of questions here to tee up, just so that to help drive some of the conversation a little bit. I'll start out first. Jim, you mentioned Forge system, and so which is a significant modernization effort for the missile warning ground architecture, and I know it's something that we are highly interested in being able to see, that delivery. A lot of the things I think we see in that future is the ability to be tactically responsive to threats as threats evolve and become and advance quickly. We stay ahead of it, right, through the Forge architecture. And so again, how do you see, what do you see the value of Forge, and how we can do that, or what are the things that we have in place going forward that will leverage that architecture to be able to stay ahead of that threat and be able to do more innovation?
Well, thank you. Actually, I think I can maybe hit on something that everyone said here, if I can get my points across clear. So first of all, I mentioned, you talked about going ahead and staying ahead. The fact of the matter is we had to catch up, okay? And what Forge was a pivot by SMC and Space Force to put in place a new acquisition approach, okay? And it's been very successful. As I mentioned earlier, we took a system that had been taken 20 years to bring to operations and had no major significant upgrades in 20 years. And we're delivering, it's operating now, it's been operating, it's delivering twice the battle space in 10% of the time, okay? It's built using a wholly modernized architecture, which is designed from the ground up for extensibility. It's government owned, so that as you need to extend it in the future, it doesn't just have to be us and the teams we bring. We partner every single day with Colonel Schmitt's teams. We're sitting shoulder to shoulder with them, and they've been there since the beginning to make sure that what we build meets their requirements, addresses their pain points, and is designed and proven to be extensible. And we've been asked and have met the challenge of extending it as we're developing the initial operational capability, which is running today. So getting towards the future in terms of that proliferated LEO or MEO or the next generation GEO and polar systems that are coming, while we are running on all the OPIR data and processing all the OPIR data today, we've load tested so we can handle the next couple of years and still be able to keep up with the automated processing and deliver it into the operator's hands so that they can use the information and they're trained right from the start. So finally, I also want to talk just a little bit about the partnership with SSC on the acquisition side, because you made a pivot and you took a large program of record and you said, we're going to go and we're going to fix this in a different way. And you used the other transaction authorities, and you had a very highly competitive effort where you had a competition, you selected several potential teams, and then you challenged them. Every 3 months, you said, you've got to deliver and demo to us certain capabilities. And they watched every team do it, and they basically tried before they bought, and then they down selected. And so, just over 2 years from that contract award, we have that fully modernized system. We're very proud to be contributing to that. I think that there's a lot of great lessons learned. And I do want to emphasize, it's been a team partnership, not just with SciTec. I think that we really have the mission excellence, and we understand how to do modern IT systems, but we haven't been able to do it without the other industry and commercial partners that we use and have always used. Does that answer that?
Yeah, great answer. Anybody have any response?
Hey, first off, James, just to clarify here, with Colonel Davis's support, we have been doing some modernization of the Sivers ground infrastructure. We've actually done it in an open architecture framework that is portable to Forge, but we are definitely putting upgrades in the system to, again, help the warfighter with the data, kind of from the exploit standpoint, to get the juice out of that system, while we then help work with your team on transitioning to the Forge framework in the future. But just wanted to correct something there.
All right, thanks. Okay, so yeah, thanks for that, for providing those answers. Again, we see a lot of innovation today, driving where we need to go in the short term. How do we, so Dave, this is something for you. How do we work with industry to drive innovation long term? What are the things you see we can do to develop additional missile warning technology? As the adversary threat continues to advance, how do we maintain ahead, as I said before, ahead of that curve, right? We want to make sure that everything we provide is looking out into the future, seeing what they're doing and pushing and beyond that, so that there never is a gap in our capability. So how do you drive innovation, and what are some of your thoughts on driving innovation? And the rest of the panelists, if you have any thoughts on that as well, but I'll give Dave the opportunity to kick it off.
Yeah, thanks, and some really great comments I've heard today. I would, start with people. Training and education. We've got to get our young folks interested in this mission set. There's a lot of different applications for the sensors that fly on these satellites, right? I remember in Afghanistan, 2008, every year it floods. Every year it floods in Afghanistan after the snowpack melt. And every year, thousands of Afghans would die, and their villages would get flooded. The year that we were working there, we were able to use OPIR type sensors to measure the ice pack, work with the Army, and pre-position bridges, and accomplish our mission in maybe a different way than kinetic. So get people excited about the tertiary capabilities that these just unbelievably and exquisite sensors can offer. I would also offer to the government, and these are things that you all know about and we've chatted about, but transparency from the government, right? We need to understand from a procurement standpoint the requirements, that the timing of the procurement is correct, and so that you can get the right mix of companies to engage in a bid. I've seen companies self-eliminate because of requirement not coming to fruition and procurements getting pushed. So I would just offer that as well. But I think where the Space Force is doing phenomenal work is in the public-private relationships, reducing risk for both, and companies are putting in the calories, they're putting in the resources and the dollars to create those next systems. And then, of course, the regulatory issues, those always seem to stifle innovation. And sometimes that's even something that Salty can't really wrestle with. He's got masters across the Potomac. But I know that you guys are fully engaged in. So I'll pause there for any discussion.
Anybody have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I have a little something, which is innovation is the courage to break the status quo, right? So innovating at a company takes leadership courage. It takes courage by the team to do something that everyone says isn't the way to go about it, right? That can happen in both the government side and the industry side, right? There are safe picks on the government side, and there are picks where you're wondering whether you make the right decision because they're doing something different or you're not familiar with them. And I think our adversaries, China, Russia, are taking chances on innovation, right? As we are taking chances on innovation, if you look at some of the acquisition reforms we've seen, particularly in the topic of this panel in the missile defense area. And I think that's the way of the future, right, is to make uncomfortable choices so that we can continue to propel us forward, right? Making the safe choice means that you're staying behind in what was right before and aren't thinking of potentially how to do something in a different way.
Anyone else?
Yeah, let me jump in a little bit on the question I think that you first asked about how do we get younger people involved, okay? What I wanted to say, one of the things that we do at SciTec and we've been successful in doing at Forge is we're using a modern architecture. We've had to staff up, even though we've partnered and we have great teams, we've had tremendous growth over the past couple of years, growing since before we started Forge from, probably 70 to almost 400 people today. And part of it is because we're leveraging what's available now and the best practices, we're able to bring in individuals right out of school who want to learn how to do software engineering the right way and the best way using those modern practices. A lot of it uses commercial for DevOps pipelines. A lot of it uses ML ops, okay? We've got, missile warning inherently is a little thin, when you think about AI ML, we can still build it into the system by balancing the expertise that we have on the mission side to provide some supervision to that AI ML algorithm set. And it's there now, and it's being used. And when our operators are using the system every single day, and every keystroke is being tracked, so we can improve those processes for the futures. So I think there's a lot of great opportunities to leverage modern technology to, attract the younger talent that we're going to need. I'm as old as the rest of the guys on this panel, so anyway, that was my comment there, Bobby.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with the attracting the younger talent with modern software tools and techniques. I think that's going to help all of us here. One thing that I was thinking of while you were talking, with respect to this mission area in particular, is no one company or no one system can handle the end-to-end kill chain problem or tracking the missile over. I think we're going to have to innovate around data fusion, around different phenomenologies, around other avenues to actually do a complete kill chain and get from photons into a sensor, custody over multiple orbits, all the way to to some sort of effector taking action. So there's a lot of opportunity. We're all building systems and portions of the system that are contributing to the overall kill chain, but I think there's going to be a lot of collaboration and innovation needed to actually stitch the whole thing together into one seamless system.
All right, well, that was some great discussion, some great points you brought up, so I very, very much appreciate that. I see on the clock we're running out of time, so I wanted to actually turn over, give an opportunity for Colonel Davis down at the end there to talk about something. So you and I have been working together for over a year now, and so I'm curious as your thoughts on how Space Systems Command is integrating with the operational units as far as to be able to pull requirements back, to be able to have those discussions with industry about, hey, these are the things we think we need, these are the things we need going forward. And the other thing I'd like you to hit on, if you don't mind, is what do you think the impact is with the new integrated mission deltas? How is that sustainment transferred to the operational delta from your perspective as formerly the lead sustainer? How does that all help us, do more, be able to do more in this mission area? Over.
Yeah, thanks, Bobby. It comes back to what I said earlier. It's about that partnering to win. In this case, how do we make sure within the Space Force's Guardians we put an emphasis on that partnership? So for mission deltas, as Colonel Schmitt was talking about, for those that aren't tracking, the new organizations that are standing up in Spock as we speak. Colonel Schmitt is now the commander of Mission Delta 4, previously Space Ops Delta 4. And the key point of that he kind of highlighted on is the assumption of the responsibility for not only training the Guardians and fielding those forces, presenting those forces to the warfighter, but also the sustainment element, transferring from SSC over to Spock. So not only is he now managing the personnel side presentation, their readiness, but also the material readiness that goes along with that. So it's a fully integrated, unified mission readiness, having that unity command for complete readiness with personnel and material. So that's the biggest change. Not a foreign concept, really, if you think about it. When Lieutenant Davis, who had a lot more hair and was a lot more handsome, started his career 25 years ago on the flight line in Albuquerque, New Mexico as an aircraft maintenance officer, we had that construct, right? I worked for the operations group commander and through that chain, right, as a sustainer, if you will, of aircraft, a maintenance officer. So we're kind of following that kind of lead where we give that single leader complete responsibility for that readiness. And I think it's a great opportunity. It ultimately comes down to seams and how you manage those seams. Previously, there was a slightly larger seam between the operations unit and the sustainers. I will say, in all my experiences of seeing that seam, it's been really small because there's dedicated Guardians that are doing the right thing, collaborating with their partners. But we've closed that seam even more today. But when you close that seam, you have to be careful you manage the other seams it presents. And so Colonel Schmitt and my organization has started some time ago, probably almost a year ago now, getting together regularly with all of our leadership down to the 05 level and sometimes a little deeper to figure out how do we manage those seams. Previous to the Mission Delta stand-up, it was managing the sustainment seam, it was managing the development seam, and now as we've handed the responsibility over, how do we manage the seam? We wind a little bit. Things at the tactical level, technical baseline management, especially now that the tech baseline is split between organizations, between different field commands, and scheduling and fielding deliveries. SPA 4Gen, it was talked about earlier, right? That cycle is pretty predictable now. That advanced training is vitally important to our Guardians, but how do we feather into that process, that timeline, delivery capability, and the training necessary to completely field that capability? It's not enough to show up with the widget. You have to make sure the Guardians are prepared to employ it as well. We've also been doing strategic things there, as Colonel Schmitt mentioned, right? How do we define the future of the mission area? How do we garner those requirements, pull those back, work with industry to refine those and make sure there's something we can deliver on, and then eventually develop and field out there. So super excited. We're working hand in hand. Jim, you mentioned earlier the hand-in-hand nature of work and development alongside the operators. We have a contingent of Forge developers inside Colonel Schmitt's facilities, working really closely with his team, and we're going to continue that partnership in order to enhance even further that unity of effort to deliver capabilities to keep ahead. I think we're doing okay now. I don't know how much we had to catch up, but or keep ahead of the threat, both that ballistic missile threat that exists today, the emerging hypersonic threat, emerging counter space threat, and be able to win that race.
All right, I think we're about out of time. So, I think there's some of these conversations I think could go for hours, right? And so I know we were given 40 minutes to discuss, and I think if nothing else, hopefully we gave some things for people to think about, like, how are we innovating? How are we getting ahead of the threat? Maintaining our advantage and continuing to maintain that advantage going forward. So I want to thanks to the panel. Thanks for being up here and providing just your thoughts. Again, like I said, I think we could take this for hours and really have a robust discussion, and we should probably be doing that more often anyways. But thanks to SciTec for hosting this panel, and for SFA for putting this together. Please join me with a round of applause to our panel members. All right, I think that's it. Thanks.